Joining me now, Tristan Snell served as an assistant attorney general in New York. Melissa Murray is a professor of law at New York University Law School and host of the excellent legal podcast, Strict Scrutiny. They both join me now. Tristan, I want to start with you. I mean, there was a lot of questions about standard practices at First Republic in this day of questioning, or that couple of hours of questioning, like if he used email and if they kept clear records before we even got into the evidence. Help explain why those questions, which felt a little mundane at times, but why are they important?
The word mundane is a really good one to describe most of what happens at a trial, actually. We're trying to follow this as well as we can, but those kind of gotcha dramatic moments don't happen that often. There's a lot of, it's really less about, firing rockets off at somebody and more about building a wall or some sort of structure. You're doing a lot of bricklaying, and a lot of it is very boring to watch, but it's very necessary if you're building a good case. So that's what they were doing there. They were basically setting the stage for them being able to go through the documents, and bringing Farrow in there at all is simply setting the stage, building the foundation, if you will, for then the bigger witnesses that are to come, the ones that are going to get a lot more headlines, like Michael Cohen.
So just to continue the analogies there, I love that, Tristan, very helpful. We're all looking for fireworks at every moment of every trial, not how it works, right?
Right.
So Melissa, I mean, to his point, bricklaying can be a little dry, it can be a little hard to follow at times. Looking back, but following the money is always the thing. How do you think, looking back at last week, the prosecution has done? How have they been doing, helping keep the jury, get the jury to understand the importance of all the specifics of this and what they're looking at as they look to the next stage of the trial?
Well, Jenna, your question presumes that looking at financial documents is always going to be dry and boring for most people, but I am someone who reads Supreme Court opinions for a living, so you can't get any more dry and boring and confusing than that. But I will say...
That's why you're here, illuminating
That's why I'm
us.
here. What the prosecution has really done here is really focused on tying each of these documents to a story. And in many ways, they have some unfavorable witnesses here. Michael Cohen famously has a lot of baggage. Documents don't have baggage. Documents don't lie. They tell the story. So it's really important that they weave these documents into this broader narrative about what happened, about the kind of subterfuge that was going on, and that how it extended through all of these different parts of Mr. Trump's network, from his fixer to his friends in the media to his fixer's banker, so that it all comes together. And these documents are actually the witnesses doing the talking.
It sounds like, I mean, they're predicting there's about an hour left. Obviously, can go more for the questioning of Cohen's banker, Farrow, about tomorrow. Or sorry, is it tomorrow? Yes, it's tomorrow. Tristan, what do you expect they plan to spend their time on? Or what do you hope they spend their time on?
So we've got the prosecution, and there I think the kicker is they need to, again, as Melissa was just saying, we need to build this whole story. The thing is that you're building this foundation, but what you really need to present to the jury is a story, because the story, that's what's going to win the case. Is going to be, are you building a better story than the other side? And the story here is about all of the lengths that they went to. I think this is really key. The lengths that they went to hide this. And they were not hiding it. I think the prosecution, this is the point they really need to make. This was not to hide it from Melania. This was not to keep it from her. You didn't need to set up a shell company and then have all these fake legal invoices and all of the other things that they went through here to hide it from her. They just needed to paper it through the business at all. If it had just come from a business checking account that she had no control over and no visibility on, she's not a signatory to any of those accounts, she never would have known. If all they needed to do was to hide it from Melania, all they had to do was cut a check directly to Stormy Daniels from one of the business accounts, and nobody ever would have known. But journalists would have figured it out. Or it would have come out in investigations. It would have come out via subpoena, something else. They did it to hide it from the American people. Now, what are Trump's lawyers going to do with Farrow? They're probably just going to identify that Farrow never had anything to do with Donald Trump. I think that's probably the main thing that you're going to hear them try to go at there. Their whole theory of the case is going to be like Michael Cohen went rogue. That's what they're going to try to say here. But the thing is that all of the other witnesses that the prosecution is bringing to bear here, including starting with David Pecker last week, are there to say this was not just Cohen. This was a whole concerted effort, and Donald Trump was at the middle of it.
All of these witnesses are corroborating it. Before we go, Melissa, I want to ask you just about this upcoming gag order hearing. Prosecutors are, of course, arguing that Trump has violated Judge Merchan's gag order more than a dozen times. Those of us who aren't lawyers and listening would agree, including several last week, of course, as they held the judge held the first gag order hearing. If the gag order was so necessary, why do you think Judge Merchan is waiting so long? I think that's what we're all wondering.
So, again, these orders take a lot of time to craft, and then determining whether someone has complied with them takes even longer. And it takes even more time when you have such a high-profile defendant as this one. I think if it were any other ordinary defendant, we would have had a very clear answer about the gag order, and it probably would have resulted in that defendant being jailed for being in contempt of court. But we have a defendant who is running for president of the United States, who's a former president, and who is constantly goading this judge to go up to the line. So this is kind of a game of chicken between Judge Merchan and Donald Trump. And Judge Merchan doesn't want to make Donald Trump a martyr for his millions of followers, nor does he want to imperil the jurors and the prosecution and the witnesses here. So this is a very delicate line that he's balancing, and I'm not surprised we haven't seen a ruling just yet.
So much to follow. You will both be working hard, and I'll be watching you both. Thank you so much for taking the time.